All right, Jasmine, are you there? Okay, all right, we there? Ready? All right,
Mhm.
let's go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our leadership conversation for Tuesday, April the 6th, 2021. And tonight we are so honored and privileged to have two stalwarts and two persons who are doing great work in our community here in Frederick, not only in Frederick, but just their impact is regional and nationwide. So we thank them for the work that they're doing, and I admire them from afar and up close. I've worked with both these individuals in various capacities, and I can tell you that they are very passionate about what they do, and their impact is far and wide. And so many people, our lives are better because of the work they do. So let's first say thank you to both of them. Tonight we are so privileged to have Miss Elizabeth Chung of the Asian American Center here in Frederick, and Jasmine Shiano DeCola, who is a community leader, and also we'll get into later what else she's doing, what else she's up to. I don't want to, well, it's not a surprise, but I'll let her speak more about that. So first off, before we kind of get into our questions, our Q&A, both of you talk about the work that you do, how you got started in the work that you do, and what you currently are doing now, because both of you are doing so much, and there's so much I think our listeners and our viewers need to hear because of the outstanding work that you are doing. So, Miss Elizabeth Chung, who I call mother because I'm her son, because I'm a Derek as well. So, Miss Elizabeth Chung, you go first. Talk about how you got into the work that you do. Talk about your story a little bit, and talk about how the work that you're currently doing now.
Sure. Thank you, Reverend Derek. It's just such an honor to be here. Yes, I have three sons, Derek Chung, Derek Boud, and Derek Holt. Now it's Derek Shackelford. It's my honor. It's great. So what I do is basically seriously a ministry. I can say that because it's how I felt. So I carried the cross since I was 9 years old. So this is my vow, growing up in British colonies in Hong Kong, and at the age of 9, and I, make that vow, except that I didn't go to conference and, kind of continue, and then came to the United States in my late teens, and then it's been 50 years. So carrying the work. So, right, get your neighbors clothes, feed your neighbors, and what, we're taught to be servant. So what I do is being a servant, and that's what I do. So specifically, because I'm as a newcomers or immigrants, so I serve the needs of the immigrant, knowing that they have certain barriers, they have certain acculturation process. Frankly, what really, 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 got me, some of my friends here probably have heard that, and because of my dad, who was here as I petitioned him as a legal immigrant, and I have to send him home to die, because he has pre-existing condition and no health insurance. And then I just simply could not sponsor him because of the medical bills too high. I have no choice. When my husband went back to medical school, I couldn't take care of my dad, but then bought one-way tickets. So he went home, and following year till he passed away. But he told me, when you go back to America, just do what you love to do. And he told me that, and he was not, a believer, but he said, just do what you are asked to do, you are given to do. So I have nothing to leave for you, but, the virtues of service. So that's what Christ is, right? So I came back and continued to serve. But then the second incident was when my husband was in medical school. I have Laotian women that carried a baby to emergency room, but couldn't speak English, took the baby home and died in her arm the next morning. And I'm an infertile mother, I adopt sons. So that's why I have Derek. So why in this country is that, we have such a premier medical care, and yet our baby died in the mother's arms just because they couldn't speak English. So because of these two incidents, I continue to serve. So my work as a director in AACF is really out of that service mindset that we are destined, at least I felt, that I'm here to serve. So as an agency, we serve those who need, because as my background is Asian heritage, so I continue to promote my heritage, preserve my heritage, but yet it's a human human race. So those who come into our door, particularly those we know that they have language and cultural barriers. So English class, healthcare access, it is integrated, right? So if someone needs help, you can say, oh, I can only help you this and not that. I think that because we are not necessarily destined or dictated, by, someone told me what to do. It dictated what the needs are, is what we do. I'm going to leave that to Jasmine. So it has been 27 years in Frederick for what we've been doing.
Tell us about the Asian American Center. Talk about the service that you provide.
So the service we provide, as I said, that start out really as a education, the institute. So I call that Life and Discovery, Learning Institute for Enrichment and Discovery. So really want to give after school programming to kids, back in 20 some years ago. And because there's no after school program 20 some years ago, it still didn't have that much right now. So I, set up computer, have the kid come to learn. And then the parents said, oh, I'm learning too, Mrs. Chung, together. So from a after school program, then because I'm Chinese, then we have Chinese language program. Then I have, cultural program, and because my background is public health and my, and my experience about health equities with my dad. So we do a lot of minority health. And this is really what prior coming to Frederick, I was in public health already, in minority health. So Asian American Center is pretty well-rounded, but it's really looking at equities in healthcare services, education, economic. But for one thing that the vision is equities, the mission is to equip everyone, including myself, with skill sets so we can be independent, self-sufficient, and make contribution to the society. And that's always matter. It's really, increasing the capacity, and that's what we do. So all the services we have surrounding those, the particular vision and mission that we have.
And which encompasses a lot. Mrs. Elizabeth is actually being modest because of the work that she does. This is what I love about you is this that you don't take no for an answer. That's what I so appreciate about you. I know if someone says no to you, I know that you're gonna find a way, and I so appreciate that because I think
That's
particularly
very persistent. I think the one to talk about leadership is do the right things right. If you believed in something, you're destined. You have to. No matter how hard it is, being persistent. It's not me, frankly. ACF is not me doing it. It's you and Jasmine and everyone else. That supporting each other to make it work. I really mean it, that without the support, without, supporting in terms of like believing in you, right? Believing in you, then you say, they believe in us. We cannot let them down. We'll keep going. We will overcome one of this day. And that's probably really the reason 1968, right? About that, Dr. King was assassinated, I believe, that time. But it was, right, him and President Johnson, that it was very inspiring that I felt that, oh, this is free countries. I want to come because we grew up so poor, and $700 was a lot of money at that time, but that's what I had coming in 50 years ago. But at the same time that then I realized that it's not true. There's so much problem in this country. It's not true. So since I'm part of the country, I need to be part of the solution too.
Well, we appreciate because your solutions that you got plenty of those, and so that's why I like to partner with you because I know that it's gonna get done. I think the song goes, if Elizabeth can't do it, it can't be done. So we so appreciate your work. So Jasmine, talk to us. Tell us about your story. Talk to us about the work that you do because you do so much as well. And so we thank you because a lot of the things which I appreciate about both of you is some of those things may not be in front of a camera, in front of with a pen and pad in terms of a media, but so much that you do is so impactful, and much of the work that you do, which impacts our community and people in our community, is behind the scenes, but it gets done. So Jasmine, talk to us about what you do, your story, and what you got going on now as well.
Yes, well, thank you for having me here. And Elizabeth, like you said, she's a powerhouse. I love being with Elizabeth, her energy, your energy, you know, and I appreciate you having me here. Again, my name is Jasmine Dicola. I was born in El Salvador. I came to the United States when I was 12 years old, exactly to Frederick County. So it's been, I don't want to say it, but 21 years since I came to Frederick County. And I actually can connect with you and Elizabeth as she was talking about ministry. My father is a pastor. My family, we grew up in the church. We knew about ministry serving, and it's always about serving others. And we knew how we faced when we came to the United States as an immigrant. It was very difficult, many barriers, language, the connection with the culture, and as a family who served here in Frederick County since then, we always helped the community. And I always saw all the needs, all the changes, and the support that not only they were facing, my family was facing, I was facing as a student here in Frederick County in the public schools. So I always decided that, my father, my mother always said, be the change you want to see in the world. And you have to act. It's not only about, like you mentioned, be in the camera, be in the picture. No, it's not about that. I think it's about the heart of serving others, giving out everything you have. And my dad and my mom and whoever it's always being around me know that they said, always give the best of you. Like you mentioned, there's so many things going on, especially now during COVID. We started to do a lot of work, and in the back, and that's okay, and the way we see change is when we start working towards a goal, when we unify, like Elizabeth said, we unify towards a goal. And I know that our community, the immigrant community here, not only the immigrant community, but many of the minorities, we've seen a lot of disparities, especially right now during COVID. And, we have to say things, that we have to speak up. And sometimes, when I see that the community just feels afraid to speak, they feel afraid that they don't have a voice. That's when I say, I can't stay quiet. I have to speak up. We've been serving. We see the changes. We see how many people are suffering. Many don't speak the language. There's so many changes. I'm talking right now during COVID. So, even myself got confused many times, when, oh, you have to stay home, you have to go out. It's so many things, right? So I decided, to be that change and get involved and, always speak up, never be afraid to speak up, always with respect, of course. But I think it's serving others. It's about just giving what you have. If you have something and you hold it for yourself, I think that's a mistake, because there's purpose in everyone. Everybody has a purpose to serve. And in every capacity, I guess, in every other place, but everywhere you are, you can give something. I think that's something that each of us have, that we understand here. And I feel that connection with all of you. And those that are listening tonight is that, you could be anywhere and you feel that maybe you cannot give something, there's something you can give. Always. There's always something from you that you can give, because there's purpose. And I believe that purpose it's my great motivation, because I know that we were meant for something. We wouldn't we're not born just to live life without purpose. We are here for a purpose. It could be in any other ways, but we have to serve. And I think that's part of what we do, is just to serve others, because we believe that, we went through the same thing. Empathy, I went through a lot of circumstances when I was growing up. The lack of resources, not learn, how to learn the culture. And that's why I'm passionate about helping the immigrant community, because I feel what they're feeling. I know what it is. So it's that empathy, I guess.
It is really interesting. I think that we just talk about really, I think it's just a surface mindset that we have. So, right, when you first asked me to talk about leadership, I'm really not a leader, but I think that I'm a servant's leader, because again, because that's a sense. I think the difference is probably a leader sometimes, in the corporate sense, in political sense, they have the powers, right? So that you lead because you have the power to lead. But I think that we lead by examples. Maybe we lead by the desire to serve. And then in order to serve, you have to have something to give, right? So, but however, it doesn't matter whether you have a lot to give, a little to give. You just want to give and just serve. So that can be your three talents, people said, right? The three T. I mean, the three treasures: the talent, the time, and your skills and so forth. So it's that sense of wanting to serve, and I think that's important. The interesting thing is that that it's an ecological cycle. When you ask me, I keep thinking about that. What is it that you really, that I enjoy so much? It's the cycles of the cycles of I guess it's ecological system. Because when I want to serve, I have to learn and I have to grow, I have to achieve. So I gain something, right? Whether it's my skills and so forth, but I need to give back to that. And so that will help people who were once like myself, or do something like what one has done for me. So it's a cycle of positive input and output, then you generate some outcomes. And that outcome is the recipient on the other side, and he or she repeat the same thing. Even if you say that your puppy doing the same thing for you, you give them love, they give, you give it to him, he give it back to you. But for human being, is that you that ecological cycle of a cycle of positive input and output that have a long-term impact. So that makes me feel good. So I say, oh, it's hard, it's very hard, but the city's plan. They're going to come back. It just never fail. And this is the thing that I have no fear, but right, the fear of the Lord. So what do I have to fear? He's giving you something that you can do. So you're just busy doing, and that Derek will come, Jasmine will come, or maybe RJ or Aaron, anyone else around you will come, because there's a light in front of that, and it'll shine for you moving forward. Isn't that beautiful? Why do you have to scare? Don't be scared, but knowing it is the right thing to do. And it has not failed me. Believe me, in my 17 years of life, I guess is what I'm saying, that just do the right things, right? So I'm not a leader, say the powers in powers, but just, to service. But I think that make my job very meaningful.
No, that is so important. And of course, I'm glad you mentioned the word servant leadership, because we're servants first. That's what motivates us to do what we do, is to serve others. I must remind of what the scripture says, that whoever wants to be the greatest among you must be your servant. And I think so often what you just mentioned about power, this power dynamic, and we sometimes unfortunately equate leadership with power. There is a power dynamic that does come with leadership, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so that part about being a leader and having power is misused. If it's all in it for me and what I can get out of it, instead of sharing, instead of giving, instead of getting. And that's part about being a servant, is it's not about getting, it's about giving. That we give of ourselves, that we give of our time, we give of our treasure, we give of our talent, because we recognize that doesn't belong to us. And it's our duty, our responsibility to give, particularly where we're in positions of influence. That the more we have, the more is required of us, and the more we should be able to give. We shouldn't hoard it for ourselves. So y'all too are also inspiring, because Jasmine, you talked about your father being a pastor. Well, you ain't too far behind him. So I appreciate it. But I think it's important to offer this for you to add this, Jasmine, that you're also a candidate for office. Talk a little bit about that and what motivated you to get into the political circles of running for office.
Sure. So I am actually, yes, I'm running for county council for the District 3, which is a district who has more of the diversity. Here in the county, we have immigrants, we have people of color, we have, the working families. And when I saw, especially during COVID, I felt it was this fire coming to me. It's time to have a representative who knows what happens to their community, who is close to them, who is willing to listen, who's willing to represent them in this way, that you don't have to be convinced of the problems. You don't have to be convinced of what's going on. And because we know, we hear it, we're out there. So I feel at the point that it was time for me to step up the game. It was not about having that political power. And I feel that I don't need that, but it is time to have someone in that seat, someone who speaks up and talks about what the community wants. What everyone's needed is not someone that needs to be convinced and be told, hey, this is what's going on. No, it's someone that's out there. And if it wasn't me at that point, I felt, when do we need this? So, and it takes courage. So I believe, it's something that is already meant for you. And I decided, yes, I will do it. I will speak up because I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to talk about controversial issues. I'm not afraid to be in the middle of maybe, someone that doesn't like me. It's okay. I'm willing to speak up. I'm willing to talk about what's important for everyone. And it's not only about one group, it's about everyone. And that's unification, something that we need in our county, something that's missing. And that's the missing piece. So that's why I feel very strong, very passionate. I feel in a way that this is the time for the community. This is what the community wants. It's not what I want, because if this was for me, I wouldn't be doing it, but this is what the community wants. If this is what the people want, then this is what I will do. So I feel very confident that, District 3 is looking for a change, and we will have that change, not because of me, but because of the people. I'm just a face. I'm just a face of everyone. And I feel like I can connect with everyone, not only the immigrant community, the Latinx community, but everyone, communities of color, the working families, the business community. I have faced many challenges. I grew up in Frederick County, and I've seen the changes. And I know that, sometimes you feel, well, she's too young, maybe. Now, our community needs someone who has the energy, who is willing to work for it. And I am, and I'm here looking forward to the future. And, we have a lot of support, thanks to everyone. And, we're looking to serve. It's not about leading just to lead. It's about serving. And I feel that leadership is not about followers. It's about influence. And if I'm willing to do this, it's to influence other women, young kids, immigrant communities, people of color, minorities, whoever is looking to speak up and looking to do something different for the good of the community, for the good of the people, to do it. And that's all I'm looking for. And I'm looking for change, a good change. We've seen it. We've seen what's happening now. We've seen what's happening in the county. And I think it's time for change.
Well, we thank you for your courage, because as you mentioned before, it takes courage to run for office, and we so appreciate your courage and your voice, and you stepping up and stepping out. So we so appreciate that, because your voice is so needed and necessary. So Elizabeth, Miss Elizabeth, see,
No, that's okay. It's okay.
I'm trying to be a good host.
I know.
Miss Elizabeth, this pandemic has really highlighted the disparities, the inequities that we see. And particularly, I know part of your passion is health care. So talk about how this pandemic has really highlighted or really illuminated what we know, but more so now in terms of what we see from vaccine distribution, from healthcare in terms of COVID testing, to COVID care, and also to healthcare around all that.
Are you sure you want to hear me talking about this?
Absolutely.
Okay, folks, I think that, I'm going to take this opportunities. As I said, I've been out in public lives, and I have public service as well. And I really felt that this is the first time in my 50-some years that, really see the pain. The pain is not to suffer unnecessarily, the death unnecessarily, particularly by, the minorities community. And it is the, first of all, let me just say this, it's the racism at a very top level in our countries, right? First of all, like we heard about the Trump administration claim this is Asian flu, the Kung flu, that's one thing. Then second of all, he doesn't really believe in his, just in science and listening to the right people and doing the right thing. So our former president did not do that. And even his own, team, Dr. Bird, and others, CDC's, directors and so forth, came out to say, enough is enough. So why do we have 500,000 more people died unnecessarily? It is just unacceptable. But that is at the very top. So because the top, trickled down before, we changed administration, and it's total disasters. We're not prepared for the testing. We're not prepared for the vaccine. How could that be that we are such a powerful country, so knowledgeable, and yet failed so desperately? I mean, it just, to me, I could not fully understand that we have more disciplined other countries that, that can't combat this crisis much more effectively. But let's just come down to our counties, and I want to focus on the counties. I know that I do not know as much in other different counties. I think that they might have, more, they might have different ways of, of the handling. But I have to kind of shape my, conversation here in Frederick counties. Frederick County is a very caring community. I'm a public health. I work with our hospitals. I work with the health department. I work with, the cities, the free clinic. It was interesting that there were roughly around 5 or 6 different groups. Reverend Derek, you are one group of the 5. Then we have the Frederick Progressive. Then we have the United Way. Then we have the health department. Then we have the hospital. Everybody's caring so much about what to do. But yet we are not talking with each other, right? I mean, even up to now, I truly do not know exactly, how everything is linked together. That's why, yes, we did as an agency, I make a pledge, let's come together and do a better job. To Reverend Derek, your group have a wonderful, mission, vision, asking a lot of good questions. Who's supposed to decide how much vaccine we give out, who to give out, when to give out, what to do, and so on and so forth. Those are all good questions. And I'm sure every group think about that. But I want to go back to the lens of equities, right? So like Jasmine said, we all read about it, it's just kind of general knowledge in terms of that the Black, the brown, and the Latinus. I don't just want to use the Black and the Latinus, then sometimes I felt left out. So it's Black and the brown and Latinus. We all have, the data to show us that we have more infections, we're more, fatalities. We know, but then what are we going to do about that? And also, why in the first place that we run into this situation? Because in general, our population, our minority population, to some extent, are less healthy, or actually, because of access, we have less, we have more, difficulties, having equity to healthcare. But in general, as a population, we're less healthy. And so the health issues, to me, as I always say, it's not the absence of disease, it's a lot of different factors. But with the pandemic, to me, that we need to have much more, if I wish the word, I'm going to call it out, cohesive, coherent, right? City, county have to talk more about how to, and listen to those who are suffering, what to do to make it work better. And I think because, it is, I want to give also, thank you to leadership of each of these entities. They're really trying hard to, run around and make, and there was not enough vaccine. And then, and frankly, it's not necessarily, enough process in place. But to me, we got to do it differently. Listen to the people, right? So Jasmine said, I know I can do this, all this Latino community, I can reach out. Reverend Derek, you have all these connecting pieces with the Black churches, or myself have the Asian immigrant, or the African immigrants. So let the people come together and ask them for ideas how to. But people began to get used to me. Pay the people to do the work. That's the thing, is that why is it so, the equity lens is this, people, they try hard to do what they need to do. But frankly, they are being paid to do the job. Oftentimes, they're those who are here to serve. And we don't want to say that because you need to pay me to do the work, but don't exploit the problem. Find solution to the problem. It's important. Form the leadership, in my opinion, right? So the pandemic show us that we're dying unnecessarily. We still have gap. The communities are not being heard. Why is it so hard? Because, listen to me, the system said 9 to 5, maybe Monday through Saturday, but people still have to try to make ends meet, right? And even though they lost job, they might still have to do one job in the morning, one job at night. It's a lot of factors, not just one factor. So I think that really accessing to the vaccine, coordinating, organizing, getting language. As I ask a question, and I be very honest with you, I'm calling out. Yes, Spanish-speaking community has the most need in language. We knew that because I provide for 35 languages, and Spanish is number one in the Frederick County, and rightfully so, because as a country too. But if you look at pockets of population, just spend a little bit more rather than say, AACF, you do change your language. Why? That's not equities. Equities have been, to me, that it has to be every sense of it, from services, right, to where the information, every word of it. And I want to say this, Jasmine, I really admire, inspired by you, and want to see that you go all the way, but you got to also helping people to understand that the office you're going to hold is for everyone. And yet those who truly believe in equities, and I know that many of friends in here, they have to put themselves in your shoes. Many of the folks that we serve, they couldn't vote, but yet they make contribution. Think about that in the Golden Mile, how much we have 5,000 some units of, the housing and so and parcel, whatever. So they pay property tax. They pay rent to the owner who pay property tax. So why is it we don't have equities in those populations? So we need, I would have to say that the mainstream to be good advocate for us. So continue to support someone like you. So I know that in terms of pandemic, in terms of crisis, and not just a pandemic, at this time, maybe this is just how things turn out. We have two viruses with the pandemic. We also have racism. And the truth of the matter is that I feel much more comfortable to talk about it this day. And it may be because it's because of George Floyd, or maybe, of those, victims of crime, in even the Chinese old lady, right, in Chinatown. Enough is enough. So we're here to serve. So that's why this is not just. I remember, and Reverend, you can help me, I think Deuteronomy says something like, the Lord wants us to give us, to want us to be just, and give us the soil, or give us a piece of soil where we can build for eternity. Then I look at it and I said, I believe in justice. So here it is in Frederick. We are giving an opportunity, whether it's just in you or, you, Reverend, in the city, myself in ACF, this land, this soil to build, up ourselves. And so we need to build that, for justice sake. So I think that it's being written. So I feel that this pandemic and this virus, it really help us to say, we cannot take it anymore. We really want the system to look at how racism has been, and let me just say one more thing, and you guys can comment. I don't want to see just black on black. I really don't. I need to see all colors and no colors. We understand the 400+1 years of suffrage. I keep saying that. But that's why, Jasmine, we need to help our community to understand the suffering of our, right, African American brothers and sisters that came way before us. We need to help a new immigrant to understand that freedom is not free, so that they can, right? They can step up and uphold this and love each other. I think sometimes we have our own, internal, to conflict. Maybe not internal. Yeah, I do in the Asian community. the Chinese doesn't speak to the Vietnamese, and then the Pakistani, the Indian, we still have conflict within ourselves. We truly have to look at the one human race. So this pandemic sees that, well, because we have those conditions in the past, or because we're being oppressed in the past, or because the system has not really opened up to see that they have to do it equitably. So this is time for us to step up and truly do it for each other's. So Frederick still have a history, have a distance to go.
No, thank you for that, and thank you for keeping it real, and thank you for calling it what it is. I think so often we try to dance around it, disco around it, instead of calling it what it is. So I so appreciate you, Mr. Elizabeth, calling it what it is and being, forthright, honest, and also challenging us, because I think that's what's necessary and needed, and not just challenging us here on this call, but also challenging others outside of this scope in terms of this circle of what we're having this conversation with now. I want to come back to you in 1 second, because I think there's something important that I think that our folks need to know. That's something that you just did. So Jasmine, talk to us about this pandemic, because I know the work that you're doing and what you see, particularly around healthcare, vaccine, racism, all these things. Like you said, Mr. Lisbon, I'll say the same thing. We got two pandemics. We have COVID-19. We also have systemic racism. Jasmine, talk to us about this pandemic and what you see.
Sure. Yes. So there is this quote about a great mentor of mine. He is already not here any longer. His name is Dr. Miles Monroe. Maybe you know him. He says, you cannot change something you tolerate, right? If you tolerate something, you're not going to make a change. So there was a point of my life, especially during COVID, that said, enough. Like Elizabeth said, enough is enough. And, many people were calling me saying, I don't know what to do during COVID. I don't understand what's going on. How do I even get tested? My neighbor has COVID. They still have to go to work. Their boss is telling them if they don't go to work, they're going to get fired. What do I do? How do we report this? I'm afraid to call the police. I'm afraid to do this. I'm afraid to do that. Where do I go? And there was a point where we're like, okay, what do we do? How do we fix the problem? There's a huge problem. How do we fix it? So I said, no more toleration. So we started to speak up, and it started with all of these new assistants that, we're leaving behind so many people who were the ones, who were suffering. There's disparities. COVID brought it up afloat, and we start seeing all these parties that sometimes we want to hide, right? We want to hide them down, and we kind of keep it down there. But yet, when crises like this come up, we can see what's going on. We can see how leadership acts, right? How our leaders will support, how our leaders are helping the community. And, through my work with RISE, I am a member of RISE Coalition. For those of you that know, RISE Coalition is an immigrant coalition who is here in Frederick to support the immigrant community. So we gathered together and started to brainstorm, connected, and we did different initiatives. One of those was to support some of the communities who did not receive the stimulus check. So we did a fundraising. We were able to fundraise $50,000. We did call out the county to help, to allocate some funds from the CARES Act for these families who were in need. Of course, it couldn't be done. So we decided to do it ourselves. So we went on, go ahead and fundraise $50,000. We were able to help 150 families. As you will see the numbers, it's not very much, but we were able to help somehow. Then we helped with the rental assistance program. We advocated for people to be included into this assistance because a lot of people, if they were not receiving this help, we will see a lot of people, getting kicked out of their homes. A lot of people also, the landlords were coming to them, breaking the law, saying that they had to leave their homes because they couldn't make, any payments or they were missing a few payments. I don't know. So we supported a lot of this. Was many initiatives that RISE took. I was part of that. I was in collaboration with them. We work in different initiatives now. We're working towards, the COVID vaccine, you see me in some of the group the groups that we're talking, Alyssa was talking about, reaching out. There's a lot of misinformation that we still need to clean in our communities that is going along. So as I said, as my great mentor, I call him my great mentor. He said, you need to stop tolerating things. It's time to speak up. It's time to send those messages to our local leaders. What are they doing for our community? How are we making those changes? How are we supporting them? How is this community, not only one community, but a whole community who is suffering? I mean, not everyone is facing COVID the same way. We have faced a lot of loss. Many people were lost. Many people were, not only lost of, death, but, many businesses closed down. How are we supporting the business owners? How are we supporting these people who have lost family members? How about those children? And there's many other issues that we're facing during COVID, and each community has their own issues that needs to be faced. And I guess that comes back to leadership. How are we leading through crisis? And I know it's very difficult. That crisis, what it does is a test, right? A test in leadership. So what it does is you're tested, and you either fail or you pass, or you in average. I mean, it is true. We cannot expect our leaders to be 100% because it's very difficult times. But we know that during, these times, that's when we find out what type of leader we have and how they're supporting the community. How are you active listening? How do we know what's going on? How do we find out what changes we need to do? Elizabeth mentioned COVID. You are working with the vaccination. How are we getting these people vaccinated? How are we taking this myth? Because there's misinformation going in the communities. Many, especially in the minority groups, and these are the people who are getting more sick. This is the people who are the ones that, have more deaths. This is the numbers. We see the statistics. We find that the people from the Latinx community, the Black communities, the people of color communities, the Asian community, we see all of it. And still, we're not informing the community. And I think it's very important that there's changes, and that's when we step in. That's when I stepped in and said, this is what I'm gonna do. We started doing Facebook Lives, like the ones you're doing right now, information videos, how they can access to different assistance through the city. The city gave many assistance. Thank you for that advocating for everyone. We really appreciate the aldermen, the mayor, the county as well, for having that, listen to some of the the outcry from the community to be included in many of the programs that were there for them, that helped many people. I will say many people because I received many calls from many people telling me, Jasmine, I am so grateful for the city, for the county, for supporting my family. Without that, I don't know what how we'll be facing right now. We see organizations like I Believe in Me, the Asian Center, providing food during these times, these difficult times. Also, what will people be doing without this food? We see big lines of people waiting for food every single week. We know that there's still a problem. How are we going to fix that problem? And it's difficult times, and I understand, but like Elizabeth said, we have to see and face those crises with courage, and see and not only hide it, but speak about it. And that's the thing. Like I mentioned again, if you tolerate things, nothing will change. And that's something that has stuck with me during many years, because I believe that when you tolerate things, you will just make it smaller and smaller and hide it all of a sudden. But when crisis comes, then you see it again. It comes afloat. And how are we going to fix it? And that's the question.
I think that, Jasmine, also too, that we need to ask a very fundamental question. Why was it in the first place? Why was our city, our county, did not even come to us in the first place? So that's the equity issue, right? That is kind of like, I felt as that being oppressed, almost like, back in the old days. And
segregation.
Right, generation.
Yes.
So
yes.
All of a sudden, it's only because the data showed, that we're not reaching out, or we're not, having enough people tested, or finally more people tested. They say, oh yes, it's a problem. And yet, why wouldn't they? If they use the equity lens from day one, then it could have been to help more people get tested sooner, maybe this is just one small town, once in one city, one county in a state. It's always, the issues throughout that we have to use an equity lens. Here on, I just encourage the leadership of our own administration. The leadership to me is not our county exec Jen by herself, or or the city mayor, the alderman, and then the city council and the staff. They need to have an equity lens. Your ministry, your executive can get information, but they have to be really given the right information, the realities of the information, what's going on. So I'm glad to also see that, yes, Mr. Hughes is in place now, holding classes, listening to folks. So that's the reason why it takes time. But it really should not have been taken 100 years for our Black community to get the museum, to get, down to being recognized, for the history, they have in Frederick County. Do we need to take 100 years to see that, that we have a diverse communities in Frederick counties? So learn the lesson from it. It's wrong to take so long, right? So if that's the case for one group, it's wrong for any group. So when you have resources, then you need to go to the people to note. And we're not here to say that, that is, what to call that, trying to be rich out of this experience. No, just do the right things right. I remember, I'm going to say this right here in publicly to say, yes, I was invited to go to the first round of this CARE Act, but I was told I'm not needed. Excuse me, we need case management to help people, even though they called, Department of Aging, it's still people speaking English cannot even get navigated, let alone people don't speak English in this crisis. Yes, I'm calling out. It's not enough just having, the 211 or having, the phone call in there. Some of our folks, even though English speaking elderly, need to hold a hand, help them to navigate where to go to get, the shot or to get the food or to get the assistance. We have folks emailing us our email, need to get a new, not some kind of seat on top of the bathtub. Okay, so we follow up with them, they're ordinary, families, but they need help. What I'm saying is that the system needs to be inclusive. When I say inclusive, truly inclusive from day one. And what really bothers me is I was told that, then I said, okay, you don't need me on round one. Please let me know when you're round two. Round two came and said, oh, we did not spend enough money on round one, so we're not applying for round two. And here comes round three. So why is it the communities is not being told, heard, included? And after all, you have to come to us to get help, and you're expecting us to do help freely. That is not correct. So I'm just calling this out to our minister to listen to me. I think it's time when you're moving forward. It's so wonderful to see so many of us talking about equity this day. And I really appreciate yesterday, I think Monday night, MLK, meetings again, looking at equities issue. So let's continue we need to do our part. The community also have to do our part, right? Educating, reaching out. But then we also recognize that they are working hard already, so even extra trip to deliver the food to somebody else, give that helpers a $10 gas card to bring some food to someone else. And because they are trust in there. So it's just have to see the impact of what we do, saving life, reducing medical costs, all in all is our taxpayer. So to me, I do have a standard about public dollars of public good. So it's just my expectation, we spend it, as a good steward, and that is just the bottom line. Do the right things right.
Miss Elizabeth, one of the things you're right, we hear particularly now is equity, and I hear this, when I hear that word, but when you look at equity, we're already acknowledging that things are in it. There's inequities. That's what we're saying, and part of I challenge folks about this equity, about be careful about using this word equity, because equity means that somebody got to give up something, and the folks who got it don't want to give it up. So you want to use equity because it's a good sound word, but when it comes time to really meet the definition of the word or what it means is, that means you got to give up. And the parts where you're saying is about having folks there in the room, part of the decision-making process. You've got to really task people and challenge people on that. I know myself, I challenge people consistently on this word equity. Don't just use it as a nice catchphrase or a buzzword. Got to put some action with it. That means that you got to look at this through a different lens. And let me help you with the lens that you need to look at this through. Because it's easy in terms of we look at white supremacy, power structure, that's always the right way. But of course, if you're, you know, and for so long, I'll say this, for so long, I always wanted to change the system. I'm gonna change the system. But when I looked at the system works the way it was intended to work for who it was supposed to work for. That's why the change of equity and looking at changing a system is so difficult, because the system works the way it was intended to work. And folks don't see nothing wrong with the system because it's working the way it was supposed to work. But we say the system is broke. I'm not trying to fix a system. We need a new system. If you're talking about equity, let's talk about equity. Let's talk about what equitable means. And so that challenge is that you got to really call folks to task. And folks sometimes don't want to hear what I got to say because I keep banging this drum, and I'll bang loud, and I don't mind banging it. And so I think this is the part for us where we talk about being servants, but we also have to use our voice and saying, hey, that ain't right, and calling it for what it is. You know, and Jasmine, one of the things you said about, you know, rent and you know, folks with roof over their head and also working, is we looked at this COVID, this pandemic through the lens of who's really essential, who's really doing the work that we take for granted, but we realized during this pandemic that we need. And those folks are the folks you mentioned, who are trying to keep a roof over their head every day, who can't afford to take off from work. They may not have no health care. Also, they may not be getting paid a minimum wage, but they're so essential because without them doing what they're doing, we can't survive. And we've taken for granted those persons who are doing this work, and we see how essential they really are. So if we're going to talk about them being essential, they need to be paid like they're essential and taken care of like they're essential and having health care because we know that they're essential. So we can't, and I'm careful about, and I'm almost going to go to the next question. I'm careful about when I hear folks talk about, let's go back to normal, because what was normal for you, and now you deem being inconvenienced. Some folks were struggling, and after you go back to normalization, are still going to be struggling. So be careful about what you say, what is going back to normal, because some stuff we should have never normalized. And some stuff should be normalized when we come out of this thing. I'm done, so I'll get to preaching all night. But Elizabeth, I wanted to ask you, because I want to both ask you because of your voices. And I think this is very serious. Miss Elizabeth, a couple weeks ago, you held a vigil. In particular, what's happened to our Asian American brothers and sisters across this country. And one of the things you mentioned was, particularly during the Trump administration, and I'll say it, when they were basically racist to the core of calling this coronavirus other names. And I'll say this, the problem I had was people I know were saying it, one, and people I know were hearing people say it without checking them. And I say this because I was on a Facebook sabbatical, but I said this off when I came back about equity, and that is our Asian brothers and sisters need our help and our assistance. And if you sitting around hearing somebody using this word, this racist language, and you don't check them and you don't correct them, and you say you tolerate it and you say you don't use that in my space, you got a real problem. So talk to us about the visual that you held, and also our Asian American brothers and sisters about what you've experienced, particularly around, unfortunately, this racist language which we've been hearing.
You know, thank you. I cannot help but to think about the whole issues of educating each others, all the way from the beginning of our, you know, maybe first book that we read, or, you know, wherever we start school. So there's so much, you know, a misunderstanding, maybe lack of understanding, maybe, right? People have no clues, in a sense that the Asian American communities way back, how many years ago? I mean, my husband's grandfather is 1860 something. The later part of 1800 came to these countries, laid, laid the railroad, right? So others, from Japan have come through and also have hard labors, the internment camp. So those are the history of the Asian American, journey in America. And that, yes, because we have not learned about that, we don't understand about that, we're not aware of that. So people think, oh, these are both people. Oh, from Vietnam, they're both people. Oh, these are the Ching, or these are the Chung, or these are whoever, right? So these are, these are the Oriental, which is the N word to me. That so when such a lack of understanding and education about the diverse cultures, that starts from the school. That's the reason why that whole cross-cultural curriculum is so important. In particular, I would love to learn more about the African, the history, our Africans, American African history, and yet I also want to learn about the Africa, the diaspora, right? Learn about the South America, learn about the North America, because that's what America is all about. So I think that for them to say that, oh, this one child, when we have this art class, I shared it in the newspaper, that, and then we just asked them, write a sentence about how you feel. And it was around right before to the march, and he put down, he was, I believe he was the Burmese kid, that being Asian did not mean I bring virus. Now, how did the little boy hear about this? Maybe his friend told him, from schools, so he felt bad about that. Then how does that little boy, or whoever that said to him, hear about that? It's misinformation, or not the right information from where news media maybe, from the grown-up maybe. So that's very hurtful. So even though it's a small statement, they're going to have a long-term negative impact. Another thing is that I shared that also too with Dr. Auburn the other day, to say that it was shared with me from a Burmese pastor that one of his members, a child, went to school with rice. It is such a natural thing for us to pack rice for the next day, right? But the child said, that the classmate teased him. It said, dog food, that's what you eat. So he was so scared, he didn't bring rice home, after that, but he has no money for school lunch. So he went hungry. So the teacher might not see, I don't know, but those are kind of things that we need. That's why I said we need to educate each other what love is all about as one beloved community. I really mean it. I really, really mean that. I said that, that's the reason why to me, that everyone is welcome to Asian American Center. But that's what we here is to serve. But yet, when you heard this kind of comments, right, that, oh, you don't need the services. Oh, you're not that important. So what's the optic? And yet we serve everyone in the county. And yet when we need help, it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. It's very hurtful. And that's leadership too, right? To have to let those to know that this is not right. This is not acceptable. And I'm not going to tolerate. That's right. Jasmine, I'm not tolerating that. I call out it is. So that's what it is. So I'm so grateful for those who came and those who are online to listen to us and send me. I mean, it's just so touching to see you folks sending me email to say sorry about the incident in Atlanta, right? It could have been your family, it could have been others' family, but it because of the trauma that we have to go through, and people recognize the pain that we went through and send us words of courage, and we really appreciate it. And we need to do more. And Frederick is a beloved community, but I'm just keep saying that I think it's getting better, but we have more to do. So let's just trust the communities, empower. That's what's coming back to leadership. Leadership to me is that you empower them, you mentor them, you encourage them, so you let them lift up. I think that it's just, if everybody can lift up to be the best, what do? They turn around and give back to this community. So, right. So I know that I have folks really, with our training program, we start with people definitely at the very bottom. They came 15 years, still cleaning house, but yet they came to us for, community health workers training. And guess what? They're now making good living, have good job. And one other, from India, and she told me that Well, I was just a housewife. That was my culture, raising kid. But I have a degree back in India. But you let me go through this training, and now I have a good job with a hospital. It is so wonderful to see. So, what I think that from a leadership standpoint, I would like to see the leadership in a system to lift up the leadership of a the organization like us, so we can continue to lift up our members. So each one teach one, and it's hard, Jasmine. I really admire you. At the same time, I know what an uphill battle, right? Because there's so much to learn. I don't know much about the system when I first came 50 years ago. It's a lot of tribulation, believe me, a lot of falling down, standing up, falling down. But if you believe in what you do is the right things, because it's the right thing to do and do it right, you prevailed. And I really think that our system can do better. It is collectively, it can't change. It can change. It just have to listen and have the open mindset. And I see that, down in Frederick counties. And again, thank to all the support. I'm being very supportive throughout, and I'm very grateful. But I still feel that there's work to do. And I like this tonight. You let us to speak about that. People hear us about it and say, yes, we support you. We need support, all the way. Lifting them up, empowering us, enriching us, and building capacity and nurturing and so we can go back and do it. But one thing I have to say, to put it out there too, we, Jasmine, the marginalized community, we have a lot to give to. Don't think that we just keep taking from other people or the mainstream. We also, believe me, that we have a lot that they don't know that we can share. And for one thing, like I say, if you speak one language, you're American. If you speak more than one, is bilingual, trilingual. So really, it's that globalization. Why is it so important? We're a young country. And why not just say maybe 3021, not 2021, 3021,000. You come back and look at this and say, wow, what this country has gone through. No other countries like America that we embrace justice, equalities, right? To the highest standard. But we, the newcomers, have to also, learn and to acculturate ourselves and be true American. I mean, just how I see it. I love my cultures, but I love my countries. Does that make sense to you?
No, I appreciate that, Ms. Elizabeth, and what you particularly the part not only about what you have to give, but what you've already given. I think it's so important. It's not just about you talk about not saying taken, but about giving or what you want to give. Let's be clear. What you've already given has been phenomenal and noteworthy and important. And I'll say this: America wouldn't be America without so many diverse persons and people, contributions and significant contributions from history. And I think that is so important. I think that story always needs to be told, as you mentioned about, particularly in our school settings. But every time we get the opportunity to share about the history of America, is not necessarily told in the history book, but let's tell the history like it needs to be told, about the richness of the people who have come from far and wide, who have come from other shores, who have made significant contributions. And America wouldn't be who it is, who she is. And the part about America is America is an infant in this experimental phase. But I like to say 400 or 500 years is an experiment based upon historical ramifications. And when we look at the history of other countries and other nations, and I think that must be clear. So, Jasmine, talk to us, particularly from the immigrant population standpoint, because one of the things, unfortunately, part of here in Frederick is this fear mongering, and the fear mongering of immigrants, of other, not persons, and I share with people that I can see through. One of the things my father always told me about language and about racism is about it becomes more sophisticated. We don't call it, we're not going to say it anymore, but we're going to come sophisticated with it. We're going to dance around it, and we'll use other things and other means and other channels and other ways to get around it. So talk to us, particularly for the immigrant community, because we know here in Frederick that there's this fear mongering that happens. So talk to us about, and that's why your voice is so important. So talk to us about that, please.
Sure, yes. So we see the immigrant community in Frederick, and it's growing. It's growing. At the same time, we see more of, the racism. It's something that, I'm not afraid to say it. We spoke and we heard a lot when we went to the vigil that, Elizabeth Chong spoke, and we talked about, there's no space here in Frederick County for racism, right? However, locally, many people for the, immigrant community face all these comments, racism, they're also afraid, there's not inclusion in many opportunities as well for growing. So we see a lot of, economic exclusion, and we see a lot of, people are paying taxes, they're taxpayers, they don't have opportunities, they don't have these programs. The children, don't have the same opportunities as other children. There's programs, and I will speak for myself as I was growing up. I went to FCPS and I was told not to apply at the college that I was going to. I was told, you don't have that opportunity. You shouldn't apply for that. You should just stay at the community college, and comments like that, it just powers up some people, and some people just believe them. It's part of identity, and I believe in identity and creating that identity for many of the new generations. And as I mentioned, Frederick County, it's a great place. I'm not gonna say it's not a great place. It's a great place, and like Elizabeth said, there's some changes, but we still need to make more progress. We still need to make more changes. We still need to make a new system, like you said. And I like that, because when we say, oh, the system is working, yeah, the system is working, but it's not working for everyone, right? It's not working for every group. And the immigrant community in Frederick is a community who has been giving many to the county. It's not only a community who is many think it's a liability. We're an asset. We're an asset to the county. We are business owners who pay taxes. If you look at the Golden Mile, who are the business owners there? You tell me. We have other people who are building, who are essential, like you said, essential workers. Is something that really it just is in me. I speak about it because we say, yes, you mentioned, there's essential to certain aspects, but we're not essential to other things, opportunities, we're healthcare. And some people think, and I will say it clearly right now, many people feel, okay, so we are this group, so they're okay for us to die. And this is some comments that I heard back from the immigrant community. They say, we can't get tested during COVID. It was at the beginning, it was very difficult for people to get tested for COVID. So they say, they're okay with us getting sick. They're okay with us spreading the disease here in our communities. And I said, no, that's not the case. I hope, right? I hope that's not the way they're viewing this thing. It's just very difficult, So there is a gap there. And we have to make a new system that works for everyone. And I'm sorry to say this, and I've said it many times, it just feels like we are segregated. This is one group and this is another group. This is a group that you would treat them differently, and we have to advocate to be included in many things. Why do we have to advocate for things? Why? This is the question we always ask. Why do we have to advocate to have a library for a community? Why do we have to advocate, to have healthcare for people? Why do we have to advocate, to get a vaccine shot? Why do we have to advocate to have a test? Is it just this group? How about everyone else? Why is everyone okay with it? How about this group has to be always having somebody like me, like Elizabeth, like someone else, like Rice, like, all these groups to advocate for others? Why are we still living segregation? It's a question that we always have. I mean, why do we have to still live that way? And it's very real. It's very real. And the only way we can change is, like Elizabeth said, like you said, like many leaders said, is educating. And it starts with our children. There's something I really believe is children, the new generation. How are we teaching them? How are we passing along our values? What are our values? The principles that we live by. It's one thing that I speak about. Something I could speak all day. What about my actions? What are my actions saying? Are my actions saying what I'm speaking, or are my actions telling something different? And I guess that's when you value somebody and you evaluate, are they really the real people that I want to follow, or this is the person that I want to follow? You know, it's about influence. And influence only comes in your household, you know, in our homes. You know, I don't believe influence is always in the streets. You know, influence starts in our house. How are we teaching our generations? What are we teaching them? Are we really teaching them to love everyone? Or are we just really teaching them to love the people we like? How about those that, you know, we sometimes don't feel so confident to be around? You know, how about those people that, you know, we are judging it by their cover, you know? So what are we teaching our children? And that's something that we really had to think about, each of us who are parents, grandparents, whatever, you know, how are we impacting our generations? Because, you know, one day they're the ones who are going to lead. And, you know, like Elizabeth said, how are we exposing everyone? And I believe in unification. I believe that everyone should be exposed to everyone, because then you change your mind. You know, I'm a missionary myself. You know, I've traveled, I've been to different countries to help. And I've seen the needs. I've seen how many people are suffering around the world. And you see that local, you know, you see, especially during crisis, and it makes me think, you know, I was still sometimes in that mentality of a third world. You know, where are we standing? But yes, yeah, it's something that we have to work on as a community, and also as parents in our homes, teaching our new generations. And I think that's very important. What is our principles? And while we speak, we act. We don't just speak, we act. Our actions talk more than words, right? So that's where I would leave it right now.
No, that's good.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
You know, and what I love about, you know, the part, you know, Jasmine and Elizabeth, because I know both of you and who you are as people is, I think, and from my standpoint of it is, the reason why we do what we do is, and I share with folks, is because I love. That's my whole. What I say about this equity, what I say about these things, and the passion I come through, and calling them, because I love, because I want this country to be what it's supposed to be. And the only way it can be what it's supposed to be is that we have to be real, we have to be true, and we have to educate, we have to advocate, we have to do these things. And that's my whole modus operandi. I love, and that whole tenet I love, because I wouldn't continue to do what I do, and I'm sure y'all wouldn't continue to do what y'all do if it wasn't for that love. Because some days you like, I could just pack up my tent, just, you know, fold it up, and that's it. But because I love people so much, I want people to have the same opportunity, the same access, be treated the same way, and for this country to be what it's supposed to be. And it's voices like yours that have to call this into account, into where we're supposed to be. So we've come to the end of our conversation tonight. Man, y'all coming back. So just to let y'all know, y'all gonna come back.
I just want to make one
Sure.
comment that, you know, it's so true. I think, don't forget the power of money. I think the money segregate us at times. So I want to say that that's the reason why I really would like, and I will advocate really I think that recently, right, our, you know, funders did a great job collaboratively coming together in terms of the distribution of food. I think that, you know, that is a good, you know, sign about, you know, they working together, and so that we don't have to go so many different places, right? So the same thing, I hope that, you know, now that, and I publicly to ask, you know, our county exec to look at the $50 million that coming down from the Fed, to look at, I mean, it is just, you know, one time, I hate to think about, you know, the money and it's not really to me for the good reason. I wish we have no COVID, but because of COVID, we have the money. So now they're taking this opportunity to look at, in particular, the school behavioral health for the children, right? I mean, even those, yeah, just focus on COVID and then also post-COVID, but just long-term health equities. So I would like to see that, you know, addressing those, you know, very fundamental, you know, the principles of equities. And you're absolutely right, you know, Jasmine, we should not be advocating. It should be the second natures, right? If it's good for one, it's good for all. What did they say? Good for the goose, good for the geese, whatever, or vice versa. So why do even we have to say, oh, please give us something? But because we have the language barrier, we have this barrier. No, you're looking at the entire population and say that what are the needs? Transportation, our Alice household, right? Our, you know, working poor. It's just all about people and one human race. And it should not be because, that this is long time, agency. So yes, with the funding, you look at them every single time you look at them and they do get a high percentages, but are they reaching out? Ask the question before you, anyone who signed a dotted line to say, I'm giving a check, to so-and-so to do the work. Ask the question, is there equities in there? Do they reach out? Do they really touch everyone in the county? If not, why not? Oh, it costs more money to have language access. So what? So, it's just a little bit more, but then it saves you the misdiagnosis. It helps you to be more efficient. It saves more time. They don't have to go to, the emergency room. Think about those long-term rather than short-term. One thing I want to share, and I know that we are out of time. I'm still not happy the fact that when I move to where I'm at right now, I cannot put signs in different languages on top of my, that the awning, our facade, whatever you call them. I use the word welcome in English. The word welcome in different languages, but my landlord did not allow me to put it up there. I have no place to go because of private property, properties. I know that, but that's wrong. That is wrong. And then yet I have, because the landlord doesn't live in Frederick, and I tried many different ways, I couldn't make a change. So it is a very upsetting gestures, or I don't know what is a system, but to me that it's just the continued mentality, the anti-immigrant mentality that we have to live with every day. It's painful. It's painful, particularly for someone, that in my case, our doors are open for all. Why am I being, ridiculed and, and treated as such and find no place, to really, do it differently. So it's just not a good experience with that particular incident in there. But I also say, Jasmine, go for that, international festival. We can do that and we celebrate diversity in a very good way, really from one end to the others. And I would like to say thank you, Reverend.
Well, we're not finished. Real quick. See, before I close this, I offer, and you kind of did it. So I'm offering this opportunity to both of you. How we move forward. What's our way forward? One of the things, and both of you have mentioned it previously in our previous conversation, but to close this, I always like to. We talked about a lot. How we move forward, Miss Elizabeth.
Well, we need to own the problem and own the solution. I said that. We want to really look at community assets, not liabilities. We need to have good, respectful communication with each other, open communication, and then do the right things right and have engagement. But I really feel the important thing is being humble. As a leader, I don't know much. I keep saying that. I learn so much from each one of you. So know what you don't know. And it's okay to ask for help, even though you might be, long time in here, to system for a long time, but to know what you don't know and ask for help. And then, I think that is what I'm hoping to see: genuine care and concern, empathy and humility. So that's what I'd like to see, this transformation about our counties.
Thank you. Jasmine, how do we move forward?
How we move forward. So for me, forward is either between you swim or you sink, right? Are we swimming? That is the question. Are we progressing? Are we moving forward? I think when you're swimming, you're staying in one place, you're gonna get tired. And when you get tired, you're going sinking little by little, right? And that's what we do sometimes. We're staying in one place and that's what we think, but I was told different. I was told that, when we don't make changes and we don't move forward or progress, we're going backwards. You don't stay in one place. This is the place you think you're here and we feel comfortable. We're right here. No, you're not staying there. We're moving backwards. So we either move forward or we move backwards. And I believe that, the way we move forward is that, Elizabeth said, active listening. We pulled and we give, right? Both ways. I don't believe it's just one way, one direction. No, it's both directions. So we need to learn to listen. We need to see the needs that they're extremely needed at this point, right? And make plans, make a new system, make a way of changes, and look at it as the reality. Don't hide the reality. I think that's one way that we need to change, and don't stay in that one place and start thinking, is looking at the reality and learn from our mistakes. We all can learn from our mistakes, right? Because if we don't learn from our mistakes, we will make it again. So I think it's that way. It's learn from our mistakes, learn that the county can do, the city, all, not only you guys, it's the community. Unify the community, include the community. Speak to the community, speak to the people, and hear what they have to say, and then we can move forward little by little. I don't believe in running. I don't. I believe in little by little, but making that progress, or else we'll sink or go backwards.
Okay, can
Thank
I
you.
give two more
Sure.
steps? I really hope that the system can get more training on, to really implicit biases, and also more training, of the hate crime prevention, bystanders, to call it out and how to intervene, because if we see, hate crimes happen, and those takes training, implicit biases. And the last word I want to say is that please check the privileges at the door. Don't break into me. And that's important. I mean, and people don't even realize it. They have more privilege than we do, and they care with them, and they act upon them, and they make policies, their policy and decision making based on their own perception of their own privilege. They need to check it at the door and don't bring it in.
Ms. Elizabeth Chung, Jasmine, Decola, thank y'all so much tonight for this rich, empowering conversation. Y'all encourage my soul tonight. Y'all encourage my heart. As the old preacher would say, I'm gonna run on and see what the end gonna be now, because y'all encourage me. Y'all to put a little gas in this tank, so we can drive a little faster now. Miss Elizabeth and Jasmine, because y'all done filled me up. I won't be able to sleep tonight just thinking about what y'all are saying tonight. So I thank y'all for your empowerment, for your uplifting, and thank y'all for your work. It's tremendous what y'all doing in our community. I'm glad to be on y'all team. That's all I got to say. I'm glad to be on the winning team. I'm glad to be on the winning team. But thank you so much.
There's a lot more though. There's a lot more.
Oh, absolutely.
Martin Luther King community, and it's just so many wonderful folks. That's why I love Frederick. I'm so comfortable surrounding those who are like-minded. I know it's hard work, but yeah. This is the first time in 27 years I'm called to ask for an opinion. Thank you so much. I waited for 27 years.
No, I know this. I know they had this moniker here that said hate has no home here in Frederick. I didn't remix that. Hate can't even visit here. It can't not have a home here. Hate can't even visit. You can't even be a tourist.
You can't even knock on the door.
Matter of fact, you can't even come through here. So that's what we saying tonight. So we ended tonight. Thank you, Mr. Elizabeth. Thank you, Jasmine, Decola. Thank you so much for the work you do.
Bye-bye.
All the best to you. Y'all continue. Y'all have a great night. We'll come back next week with another conversation. Sure. But y'all coming back. So y'all have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.